to walk it till death? Are you willing to continue on doing the things that God's called you to do and do them honorably as God would have you to do those things until the day you die? Or are you thinking in the back of your mind, I'm just going to quit today and I'm not going to do anything anymore? You know, the more I studied Demas, the more I looked at Mark, the more I sit there and put myself in there with them. I wondered, would I have been a Mark? Would I have been in the first missionary journey and the first sign that I was going to end up being nailed to a cross? You say, preacher, what does that mean today? Folks, the world hates you if you belong to Christ. They hate you. They want nothing to do with you. I've walked in and talked to many people in big business over the years. And the very minute, most of them, in the very moment they find out you're a preacher, they start backing away. They don't want nothing to do with you. They got to talk nice. You're a preacher. They can't cuss you out like they do the world. You see, the world hates us. Now think for a minute, those early days for Mark. And those early days of those missionary journeys, knowing that he may die any time, and how many times he's seen some of the peoples and disciples that were literally being nailed to the cross. Sometimes they were put in big boiling pots of oil and they were boiled to death. How many of you would stand up to that? It was brought up in Sunday school this morning. When we look at America, we don't see too much of that going on, do we? But it's certainly going on in other countries. We had a preacher that spent several years in prison in what, Turkey? They hate us, folks. So the question is, where do you stand this morning? I want you to ask yourself, am I really dedicated to God, or am I fooling myself? Do I love God enough that I'm going to stand with Him down to the death, or am I fooling myself? Here's a word or a little statement that you may not like to hear, but this is what I decided a long time ago. I'm sold out to Christ. He's the most important thing in my life. He's the most important thing that could ever happen in my life. And when I die, I want Him to go with me. And He will. If you're sitting there saying, preacher, I'm not dying to myself. That's all Christians ever talk about is dying. Then you have an issue with your salvation, don't you? James Kennedy says, Christ, then Mark. Demas had served as Paul's right-hand man, traveling with him on all 4 missionary journeys, and experiencing shipwreck, trials, and beatings. How many trials have you had lately? How many times have they nailed you off to a post out there and beat you? How many times have they threatened to put you in oil and boil you to death? I remember when the Twin Towers went down. I was a substitute teacher in Cumberland County Schools. Had been for right at 2 years. And I remember when they first started showing the pictures coming in on the TV screens in the classroom, and one of the kids looked at me and said, hey man, we're at war. And I thought they had pulled a prank on me. I didn't believe it. And a few minutes later, I discovered it was real. We were at war. Guess what happened? For about 4 weeks, every church in our community filled up. They couldn't even hold the people when they thought the world was coming to an end. And just as soon as they realized that everything was okay, they went to go back to their own little places. All of a sudden, it was no longer... In other words, if I'm going to die, I'm going to rush to God. But if He's not going to let me die yet, then I'm going to go back to the world because I'm a Demas and I love the world more than I love God. Mark, on the other hand, had dropped out of Paul's first trip. Mark had quit and gone home. When Mark felt ready to serve again, Paul refused to let Mark travel with him anymore at that time. You say, preacher, well, he was being mean. I think he was treating Mark like this. I don't know that I can trust you anymore, Mark. You'd probably throw me to the wolves and you would run like you did before. You say, preacher, we're in America. They don't decapitate us here. We're talking about spiritual decapitation. Sometimes, and I'm going to pick on a lot of people here this morning, but sometimes if the weather just ain't right, we don't come to church. If there's too much traffic out there, I'm not going to church. Every excuse in the world. I've had them. I've used them. I've used them for everything in this world except doing what God said. If God said pick up your cross, He means every day, every day, every day. Keep following Him. Let's look at chapter 3 just for a few verses, and then we'll continue tonight and then Wednesday. Chapter 3, verse 1. Paul warns. He said, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers more of themselves." Let's stop right there. Do we love ourselves more than we love God? Do we love ourselves more than we love God? If we love ourselves more than we love God, we do what the flesh wants instead of what God wants us to do. I can't tell you how many people over the years that I've had lightweight arguments with. Do you tithe your income after you pay all the expenses because they ain't got much left? Do you give 10%? That's a lot of money. It reminds me of a joke I heard a preacher tell one time. A man came to him one time, he hadn't been saved too long. And the man told the preacher, he said, "Preacher, I ain't got much money. I want you to pray for me that I can tithe and do all the right things in the way God would have me to do it. Please, preacher, pray for me." Preacher prayed for him. The weeks passed. All of a sudden, he went from $20 and $30 and $40 a week, a long time ago, to $70 and $80 a week. And the preacher noticed, because somebody had to gossip and tell him, "You know that man that's been bragging about all this money he's making, he ain't tithing a penny of it." So the preacher went to him and said, "Brother," he says, "God's blessed you. He's gave you double, triple the kind of income you had, and you're not willing to tithe it." He said, "But that's so much." He said, "That's just so much. If I take all I'm getting now and take 10%, man, that's a hunk of money." "Preacher, you heard it. Let's cut the salary down." "Oh, wait a minute, preacher." "Whoa, wait a minute." Isn't that the way we are, folks? I remember whenever I first got saved, I had a battle with tithing. Not that I didn't think it was right or wrong. I knew it was right. But I just was not accustomed to writing a tithe check to the church. But let me tell you what the tithe check means. If you do it with the right heart, God will divinely protect your finances and everything that goes on in your life, and His will be done. It may mean that He's going to bless you in a multitude of ways financially. It may keep your car from dying and going into the garage. It may keep you out of the hospital. But I'm here to tell you, if you don't tithe your income, everything that comes your way, you can't say a word. Because you have refused to believe in the living God. Paul tells them in verse 3, he says, "These days we're living in, like what Mark and Demas has gone through." He said, "People without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded people, lovers of pleasure more than the lovers of God." For my little girl, I got two daughters. One's Melissa, one's Laura. Melissa's the oldest. Melissa will finish up this coming year with her doctorate in Bible apologetics. I'm very proud of her. She's written 5 books. You can buy them on Amazon if you want. They're good children's books. One of them is an adult book now. I haven't had a chance to read that one, but that one hasn't been out too long. Laura is a stay-home mother. She's got several kids. And I think Laura tries to do all of the things that are right in her life. But I love my 2 daughters as much as you love your sons or daughters or whatever they may be. And I remember many times little Melissa come up to me, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. "Daddy, is this the summer you're going to take me to the coast? Daddy, is this..." White Lake is a big thing for us now in the family. "Daddy, you're going to take me to White Lake. Daddy, is this the summer I get to swim?" And I'd always put the church in front of it. And I very seldom gave her the time. And I feel guilty of that. But then there's the other side of that coin where people say, "By gosh, them's my kids. By gosh, that's my mama. That's my daddy." And they drop church and just do whatever they take a notion that they want to do. The Bible is very clear that Christ has got to be number one. He says, pick up your cross and die by it. He says, pick up the cross and die daily. Having a form of godliness is what these people are, but denying the power thereof it. He says, from such people like this, turn away. What does that mean, preacher? People that don't want the tithe of their income have got a problem with their salvation. People that don't want to come to church on a regular basis are not as mature in Christ as they should be. The Bible is very clear. What happened to Mark? Why did he fall out? Why did Demas, after 4 missionary journeys, seeing all of the things and even the miracles that Paul was used by God to do, and he still turned and left? As a matter of fact, let me read the verse to you. Verse 10, chapter 4. It says, do thy diligence to come shortly unto me. For Demas hath forsaken me, having loved the present world, has loved the present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica. How would you feel? Now let's back it up. How do we think God feels when He's watching us as His children, depending on us to do what He wants us to do? And if we turn, for whatever reason, and go in another direction, how does God feel? Let me give you the best example. When your children were growing up, and you taught them all of the good things, you took them to church, you done everything you could, and all of a sudden one day you discovered your children were doing things that you were so embarrassed over. They were doing things that you never dreamed they would do. It was so embarrassing. It was so trashy. They were living in the world worse than people that had never gone. How did you feel? Now we know how Christ feels. Verse 8, Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses also with their tricks. And do these also resist the truth, men of corrupt minds, reprobate concerning the faith? But they shall proceed no further, the Bible says. For their folly shall be manifest unto all men, as there also was. You know what I go back to? You can drop everything that I've said, because I always go back to this. If you can go back, like Mark dropped out, first missionary journey, but somewhere down the road he tried to come back. Paul said, nope, I don't trust you no more, unless the Lord tells me, Mark, nope. But something happened that turned him around. Something happened that made Paul receive him again. If Mark had not done this, the first thing I would have thought is, well then Mark, you never really knew Christ, did you? You never really knew Him. You just thought you did. You were deceiving yourself. But when I look at Demas, 4 missionary journeys, all the work and all the miracles and all the things that took place, and he still turned and walked away because he told Paul, hey, I'm in love with the world, Paul. I've had enough of this preaching. I've had enough of this church stuff. I've had enough of this reading the Bible. I've had enough because the world is full of everything that I want a part of. I can imagine how he must have felt. Verse 11, persecution, affliction, which came to me at Antioch, Iconium, Lystra. What perfection or what persecution I endured, but of them of the Lord delivered me. Yes, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus, ye shall suffer persecution. Now, let me get the heat off of you. If you're going through that kind of persecution, that must mean that you're walking with the Lord. You've got a battle going on inside of you, and you're trying your best to do the right thing, and that's why all of that battle is going on. Now, it will not continue if you don't get obedient and do what God wants. You'll sear your conscience, and when you sear your conscience, you'll eventually do just what Demas did. You'll turn and walk away. And one day when you get old, well, I wish I hadn't done that. Reminds me of a story of a man that I got to know whenever I was with the phone company back in the 70s. The father of this particular home had a call to preach the gospel. He fought the call. He knew he had the call. He knew with everything in his heart and soul that he had a call to preach the gospel. All he talked about. But he turned. He never even tried, even though he knew it was in his spirit to do it. He turned. His own son told me, he said, you know, my dad went to some of them churches over there around Carthage and Robbins and whatever, Sea Road. Y'all know what I'm talking about. He said when his dad was living, old Oliver Green was still alive during some of those years. He said he'd walk up to the side of the tent and kick it and cuss at him and tell him to leave. He didn't want him around. He was on his dying deathbed. I talked to the brother, and he lives up here close to Winston. He's retired as a preacher, one of the sons. He lay on his dying deathbed, the one that had the call, and said, no, Lord. He said, I'm going to stand before God now. My hands are empty. I don't have anything. He pleaded with God. He said, Lord, I've made a mess of my life, but I'm begging you, Lord, call one of my sons to preach the gospel. And that boy did preach the gospel, and as far as I know, he preached it all through to his retirement years. But where does that dad stand today? I would believe, and this is my opinion, I would believe the fact that he fought it so long. Why? Satan was so powerful. He might have been a member of a Baptist church. Now, I say that lovingly because we're bad for getting people saved, but we don't disciple them and teach them that they can grow and mature whenever they come in. How many of you remember when you were just a little child had training union? Anybody remember training union? It was designed for those young people that had just got saved. They could go in there and somebody would spend their time working with them as they grew and matured. Well, as I close, here's the question. And I don't believe that you can say I'm neither because you are one or the other. Would you classify yourself as Mark or Demas? If I had to pick between the two, I would probably say I'm probably Mark. Because when the pressure got on me and I felt like God just didn't wipe everything out and make everything brand new real fast, I'd have probably lost and got discouraged. But then when I got home, and my praying mother and my praying grandparents found out what I had done, they'd go to pray and they'd go to pray and they'd go to pray, and I'd start getting convicted, and then I'd go running back just like I believe Mark did. Are you Mark? Or is it possible you're Demas? Let's stand.